The thrilling story begins with a girl named Kaya, who had to mature quickly at a young age because of her family situation. Not long ago, Kaya lost her mother in a tragic accident at sea, and since then she has carried deep sorrow. Now her family consists only of her father and younger brother, for whom she is obviously responsible. Though burdened with many responsibilities, Kaya still tries to enjoy her life. Within just a few months, she had learned many things she previously knew nothing about. One day, Kaya's best friend Claire invited her to hang out so they could go somewhere fun and lift her mood. Kaya went straight to her father to ask permission. Still lost in grief, he was cleaning his boat and crying, because that very boat was connected to the accident in which Kaya's mother died. During a trip, her mother had fallen into the sea and was struck by the propeller, and ever since, her father blamed himself even though it wasn't truly his fault. Kaya comforted him, asked for some money, and told him she was going to her friend's place. He allowed her to go, and she drove off in a jeep to meet Claire. Claire had been waiting for a long time, and when they finally met, both were excited. They began planning a small trip, an idea made by Claire, not Kaya. Claire explained that Joe would be joining them, along with his brother Ryan, and together they could all have fun. Hearing the boys' names made Kaya feel a little uncomfortable, since she wasn't very social and preferred being alone. She tried to refuse, but Claire kept insisting until Kaya finally gave in. Soon, Claire introduced her to Joe and Ryan. For some reason, Ryan couldn't take his eyes off Kaya, almost as if they liked each other instantly, though since it was their first meeting, they didn't show much reaction. While discussing their adventure, Joe suggested taking motorboats to explore a nearby island. Kaya immediately refused, knowing the trip would take all night and she couldn't leave her family alone for that long. She needed to be back home before dark. But Ryan and Joe reassured her the island wasn't far and that they had been there recently. It was safe and would only take a few hours. Kaya still had doubts, but Claire convinced her, and finally the four friends agreed to go. None of them realized how much danger they were putting themselves in, or that soon they would encounter something ancient and deadly that might cost them their lives. They prepared 2 motorboats, geared up, and set out toward the island. The water was crystal clear with nothing visible in the distance, yet their adventurous spirits kept them going. After traveling for a long while, they finally reached the island, and it was stunningly beautiful. Joe and Claire wandered off to have fun, while Kaya sat with Ryan, enjoying a peaceful moment she truly needed after the heavy atmosphere at home. Talking openly with Ryan made her feel unexpectedly happy. The group spent hours on the island, and as evening approached, they decided to head back before dark. Claire rode with Joe on one motorboat, while Kaya sat with Ryan on the other, both boats speeding rapidly across the water. It was then noticed that Joe had suddenly increased the speed of his motorboat, far beyond its normal pace, and obviously, the result was inevitable. The boat flipped, sending both Joe and Claire crashing into the water. Ryan and Kaya, following behind in their own boat, had no idea that the two had just fallen in. Ryan didn't slow down and kept moving forward until suddenly his boat struck Joe with great force, leaving Joe with a severe head injury before he disappeared beneath the waves. The collision also knocked Ryan's boat off balance, causing it to crash into the other boat, and in seconds, all 4 friends were thrown into the water while both motorboats were badly damaged and leaking fuel. Claire quickly grabbed Kaya, who couldn't swim, and kept her afloat, while they managed to pull an injured Ryan out as well. But Joe was nowhere to be found. Ryan grew frantic, calling out for his brother again and again, but there was no response. They all realized in horror that Joe must have drowned, his body lost beneath the sea. Shaken and terrified, the 3 survivors now faced another grim reality. Their boats were useless, leaving them stranded until someone came to help. Claire began to panic, completely unprepared for such a situation. Luckily, their floating suits kept them from sinking. But suddenly, from the distance, they heard movement, and to their horror, a shark was closing in on them, likely drawn by the blood in the water. Sharks have an incredible ability to sense blood and even splashes from miles away, so survival now depended on quick thinking. Meanwhile, Kaya and her friends were still stuck in the middle of the ocean with no idea what to do. Then, suddenly, they heard the sound of another boat approaching. Waving frantically, they caught the attention of a captain named Ray, who steered toward them. Reaching their side quickly, Ray began pulling them aboard, starting with Ryan, who was too injured to even stand. Once everyone was calmer, Ray went below deck to grab some medicine. Claire went below deck to assist the captain, leaving Kaya behind with the injured Ryan. But from that very moment, something felt wrong. Time passed, yet neither Captain Ray nor Claire returned. Suspicious, Kaya told Ryan to rest while she went down to check. Claire was nowhere to be seen, only Ray was there, pretending to search for medicine. Kaya asked him which medicine would help Ryan recover, but instead of answering, Ray picked up a small bottle. At first, it looked like medicine, but suddenly he pressed a cloth soaked in it over Kaya's face. It was chloroform. Within seconds, Kaya began to lose consciousness, and it became clear Ray was not the good man he pretended to be. He hadn't saved them out of kindness, he had his own sinister intentions. Once Kaya was unconscious, he carried her to a locked chamber below deck and left her there without hesitation. Ray showed no concern for Ryan, who was badly injured, because his interest was clearly only in the girls. When Kaya regained consciousness, she found herself trapped in the chamber, terrified, with no way out. Soon Claire woke up as well and realized she too was imprisoned. The two girls noticed strange markings carved into the wooden walls, including the word "help," along with strands of women's hair scattered on the floor. It was horrifying evidence that other women had been held captive there before them, and now it was their turn. Their only possible exit was the hatch above, but it remained locked. Kaya shouted desperately for Ray to let them out, but he ignored their cries. He had deliberately imprisoned them for reasons they didn't yet know. After a while, he returned, opening the hatch only to throw down raw fish for them to eat. Kaya begged him to release her, pleading that her father and brother needed her, but Ray grew angry, telling her she would never leave. He locked the door again and went back to his daily routine, eating, listening to music, and carrying on as if everything were normal. For him, this was a twisted game, something he had done to many women before, though what he did with them afterward was still a terrifying mystery. Hours dragged by, Ryan remained on deck, badly wounded, untreated, and starving, left to die because Ray only cared about Kaya and Claire. The girls sat in fear, regret filling their hearts for ever coming on this trip, when suddenly, from outside the boat, they heard the sound of another vessel approaching. They thought another boat had come to help them, so they believed they would be rescued soon. But it turned out the other person on that boat was not a rescuer at all but a doctor Ree had called to treat Ryan. At first it seemed like, no matter how bad things were, there was still some humanity left in Ree. The doctor thoroughly examined Ryan, checked his wounds, and collected information about how he had arrived and what internal injuries he had. Ryan told him everything, and the doctor began treatment accordingly. After a while the doctor came down into the lower chamber of the other boat, where Kaya and Claire were being held captive, and began asking them where they were hurt, saying he had come to check them and give medication. Claire had a minor wound on her abdomen, which the doctor carefully examined, but Kaya remained suspicious and kept glancing at Ree. Neither of them could escape because there was water all around. After the doctor finished examining them, he went back upstairs and Kaya and Claire were locked up again. But they were suddenly jolted by Ryan's screams, and then the shocking truth emerged. The doctor was removing Ryan's body parts while he was still alive. He had harvested each organ to sell on the black market, which revealed that Ree and the doctor were working together. They lured strangers like this, extracted their organs, and sold them for large sums. Ryan kept screaming but no one helped. After the job was done his body was thrown into the water, probably torn apart by sharks by then. Kaya and Claire understood that Ryan had been killed and that the doctor was not a good man. Both girls were broken and cried helplessly, unsure who would save them or whether they would suffer the same fate. Upstairs Ree and the doctor discussed the girls. After examining Claire the doctor said she was severely injured and that the best course was to kill her and take her organs, while Kaya was strong and healthy and could be handed over to a very rich client who wanted fresh organs. The profits would be split between Ree and the doctor. Ree liked the plan and brought the doctor down. Ree seized Claire and dragged her away. Kaya tried to save her friend but was struck and knocked unconscious. What could she do against such a powerful man? Ree took Claire upstairs as they prepared to do to her what they had done to Ryan, and for a long time they continued to abuse Claire. When Kaya regained consciousness she could still hear Claire's cries, which meant they hadn't harvested Kaya's organs yet. The doctor, meanwhile, had ordered Ree to bring Claire to the boat's hold, where he would carry out his procedures. Kaya urgently needed to do something because there was very little time left. She searched for a way out and noticed a ceiling fan above that was currently off. In many boats a fan like that is near an exit, so Kaya pushed and forced the fan out, finally making an opening. She squeezed through the small hole, climbed out, and began looking around for Claire, determined at any cost to save her friend while cautiously peeking to see whether anyone else was in the room. But Ree was still there, so Kaya took a different route. When she reached another chamber she grabbed a bow and arrow used for fishing and moved forward, climbing up toward where the doctor was. He had Claire strapped to a stretcher and was performing experiments on her. Kaya immediately stopped him and aimed the bow and arrow at him. The doctor was shocked by Kaya's bravery. He couldn't understand how she had gotten out of the chamber when no one could leave without permission. Kaya told him plainly to let them go or she would kill him. The doctor tried to trick her into surrendering the weapon, but Kaya knew that if she hesitated he would kill her, so she shot an arrow into his abdomen. It hit him but did not kill him. The doctor lunged at Kaya, trying to finish her, and it seemed he would succeed, but Kaya had cleverly freed Claire's hands, and once Claire steadied herself and saw the doctor attacking Kaya, she picked up a nearby knife and stabbed him repeatedly. Together the two girls beat the dangerous doctor until he was dead. Fortunately, Ree didn't yet know what had happened, so before he could suspect anything, Claire told Kaya that the doctor had come from another boat. If they could reach that boat, they might escape. Kaya agreed, and they left the doctor's body and jumped into the water. They had to reach the other boat because Ree soon realized what had happened. He came down, found the doctor's dead body, and discovered the girls were gone, so he guessed they had killed the doctor and tried to escape. Instead of reacting strongly to the doctor's death, Ree began scanning the area with lights, and when he shone them on the water, he saw Kaya and Claire swimming toward the doctor's boat. He wanted to reach them quickly, but when he went to start his own boat, the engine wouldn't turn on. He went down to the engine room and found many wires cut. Kaya had sabotaged the wiring before trying to escape, knowing Ree would try to start the boat and pursue them. Kaya's quick thinking had paid off, but Ree was furious and would not let them go easily. Swimming in the water, Claire struggled the most because her abdomen had been badly wounded. Kaya helped her, and thankfully a life raft floated nearby around Claire, keeping her afloat. Kaya quickly came up with a plan and told Claire to stay put while she herself went to the other boat to get help. She was in a rush because Ree could reach them at any moment. Even though the boat's engine wasn't working, the waves were slowly carrying it forward. Claire was too weak and shocked to speak, so Kaya swam ahead toward the boat as fast as she could. After a long, exhausting swim, she finally reached it and slipped inside the engine room, trying desperately to start the engine and get the boat moving. But Kaya didn't have the key or the necessary controls to start the engine, and a wave of panic washed over her. Every second counted. Claire was injured and vulnerable, and Ree could appear at any moment. She frantically searched the engine room, trying to figure out a way to get the boat moving, but nothing seemed to work. Then, through the chaos, her eyes caught a radio tucked into a corner. With trembling hands, she picked it up and attempted to contact the coastal guard stationed along the shore. At first, there was nothing but static, and her heart sank, but after a few tense moments, a connection was finally established. Kaya's voice trembled as she explained their dire situation. They were stranded in the middle of the sea, pursued by a dangerous man engaged in illegal activities who was determined to kill them. She admitted she was inside the boat but didn't know how to operate it. The officer on the other end listened carefully and then explained that they could not pinpoint her exact location unless she deployed a tracker. Every boat carried one. If activated and thrown into the water, it could immediately transmit coordinates to the authorities. The officer instructed Kaya to find the tracker and release it, but she had no idea where it might be. She tore through the small engine room, flipping switches and opening compartments, her chest heaving with fear and exhaustion. The officer's voice rang in her ears, reminding her that without the tracker, no rescue was possible. Her panic mounted, and she felt the first sting of despair. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she spotted a flare gun. She gripped it tightly for protection, her hands slick with sweat and blood. By sheer luck, her eyes finally landed on the tracker. She snatched it up, activated it, and prepared to throw it overboard, praying that it would work. Just as she was about to act, she froze. A splash echoed near the boat, the sound unmistakable. Someone was swimming toward them. Claire wasn't capable of swimming that fast, which left only one possibility: Ree. He had somehow reached the boat despite its broken engine. Adrenaline surged through Kaya as fear and determination collided. She dove into a nearby chamber, pressing herself against the wall, her heart hammering in her chest. From her hiding place, she could hear the boat creaking as Ree stormed aboard, his rage palpable in every movement. Kaya's eyes darted around the chamber and fell upon dozens of framed photographs. They showed the doctor, Ree's accomplice, with 2 or 3 young daughters. How could a man with a family commit such atrocities? The thought made her blood boil. She clenched the tracker in her hands, knowing she had to complete her task. If the tracker reached the water, the guards would know exactly where they were. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Kaya began to climb toward the upper deck, keeping low to avoid detection. Then, in an instant, Ree appeared, cutting her path off. His eyes were wild, his knife glinting under the faint light, and Kaya realized there would be no second chances. Every instinct screamed at her to act. She tightened her grip on the tracker, bracing herself for the fight she couldn't avoid. This time, Ree made no mistakes. With a flash of his knife, he lunged at Kaya, slashing across her abdomen. Pain exploded through her body, and she let out a scream that echoed across the deck before collapsing to the floor. Ree loomed over her, his eyes cold and merciless, ready to finish the job without hesitation. Every second counted, and it seemed as though her fight was over. But Kaya had one final trick. Summoning every ounce of courage and cunning she had left, she pretended to step closer, drawing Ri in as if she meant to surrender. For a brief, critical moment, Ri hesitated, his guard lowering ever so slightly. In that instant, Kaya sprang into action. She yanked her flare gun from her side and fired it straight into his face. The flare ignited instantly, burning him from the inside out. Ri screamed and thrashed violently, clawing at his own face, giving Kaya the precious seconds she needed. Gritting her teeth against the pain in her own abdomen, she slipped past him, leaving him writhing on the deck, and began moving toward the upper level, every step fueled by sheer willpower and determination to save herself and Claire. Blood loss made her dizzy, and darkness crept at the edges of her vision, but she knew she couldn't stop. The tracker had to go into the water, no matter what. Gathering the last of her strength, she staggered to the deck and pushed the device with all her might. Fate seemed against her. The tracker slipped and caught on the very edge of the boat, teetering precariously. Kaya's arms trembled, her energy spent, and she could push no further. Weak and bleeding, she sank to the deck, finally losing consciousness. Time passed, and the sea grew restless. Waves began to crash violently against the boat, tossing it like a toy. Slowly, the tracker, perched on the edge, began to shift. Inch by inch, the water tugged at it, nudging it free from its stubborn perch. The tension was unbearable, as if the ocean itself held its breath, waiting to see whether Kaya's desperate gamble would pay off. Finally, the tracker slipped from the edge of the boat and plunged into the water, activating with a faint beep that sent a signal out across the sea. By the time dawn broke, the Coast Guard had received the coordinates and were already en route with full rescue teams. The waves were still choppy, but a rescue ship cut through the morning mist, racing toward the stranded boat. Kaya was the first to be found, slumped and barely conscious, her body battered and bloodied from the ordeal. The rescuers worked quickly, lifting her onto the ship and immediately preparing medical care. Every movement was urgent, her condition was critical, and every second counted. As they secured her, some of the guards returned to the boat and discovered Ri's lifeless body sprawled across the deck. The scene quickly revealed the grim truth. Ri was not just a violent predator, he was a wanted criminal who had eluded law enforcement for years, terrorizing countless victims. Even in the chaos, the rescuers spotted Claire in the water, clinging to a life raft, her body bruised and exhausted but alive. Relief washed over the team as they pulled her aboard. Both girls were finally out of immediate danger, their nightmare at last over. Claire broke down, her sobs uncontrollable, overwhelmed with guilt and relief. She had been the one to suggest this trip, and the memory of what could have happened weighed heavily on her. Kaya, too, remained weak but conscious enough to share a fleeting glance with Claire, a silent acknowledgement that they had survived against all odds. The rescue ship cut through the waves toward safety, carrying the two girls away from the horrors they had endured, and toward medical care and, finally, a chance at life beyond the terror of that fateful island. None of them could have imagined that what began as a simple, carefree outing would escalate into a life-threatening ordeal. The calm of the water had turned treacherous in an instant, leaving Kaya and Claire struggling against the currents, battered and exhausted. When they were finally pulled from the water and lifted into the safety of a waiting helicopter, the weight of their injuries and the shock of survival pressed heavily upon them. As they glanced at one another, a silent understanding passed between them, a shared, unspoken gratitude for having made it through alive. Each reflected on how close they had come to losing everything, and both made a quiet vow never to return to such a dangerous place. For Kaya, the promise carried an even deeper weight, as she felt the responsibility for the safety of her family keenly upon her shoulders. At last, their terrifying ordeal came to an end, leaving behind not only relief and lingering pain but also a profound appreciation for life, marking a hard-won, deeply satisfying conclusion to their harrowing story.